Hey everyone, my name is Steven and welcome back to Storytime. Let's not waste any time and get into the first story of the day. I have to show up at 8:30 no matter what the schedule says? You got it. I was working for a child care center while I was in college. We staggered staff in and staggered them out so that we were always fully staffed when all the kids were there, and they all had various arrival and leaving times. So staff could be scheduled to arrive anytime between 7:30 a.m. and 2 p.m. I worked Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4:30. Even though my schedule was fairly permanent, I would check the schedule that got sent out every Sunday evening. It would always get sent between 6 and 9 p.m. and it would be for that current week, so we had less than 24 hours notice for our weekly schedule. A hot mess express if you ask me, but I'm not in charge and my schedule is set, so I don't raise too much heck about it. One week I get the schedule and it says that my arrival time is 9 a.m. instead of my usual 8:30 for the entire week. I figure they're just trying to make minor cuts and they really like having everyone under the full-time threshold, so I just assumed they were barely cutting my hours so they could get away with it. No big deal, but I knew that most of the kids arrived at 9, so I would need more time to set up. I get there at 8:45 on Monday and set up quickly and go about my day. I do a little prep Monday night so I don't have as much prep to do in the morning. So on Tuesday, I get there at 8:55, clock in, and begin my day. My week goes on like that with me prepping in the evening and getting there at 8:55 until Thursday when my boss calls me into the office and reprimands me for my tardiness. I tell her the schedule tells me that my arrival time is 9, so I'm actually arriving early every day. She says that the schedule says 9 just to indicate that you are the morning shift, but if you're scheduled for classroom time, you need to arrive at 8:30 regardless of what the schedule says so you have time to set up the classroom. I don't agree with this at all, and it's obviously not true because not everyone arrives at 8:30 anyway. There has to be more distinction than just morning crew versus afternoon crew on the schedule. But she admits that she's partially to blame for the mix-up, and doesn't turn it into a formal write-up. I start arriving at 8:30 every morning. Just like I had been before the week in question, I'm not a late person. One week I was going to be scheduled for the 1 to 6:30 shift because another coworker needed to switch with me and we both agreed to this. So the schedule comes out and says my arrival time is 1 p.m. I arrive at exactly 8:30, clock in, and sit my pretty butt in the office chair and wait. Well, eventually my boss notices that I'm just hanging out in the office and asks what I'm doing. I say, well, I was told to arrive promptly at 8:30 no matter what the schedule says. So here I am. She says, we don't need you here for the morning so you can clock out and come back when your shift begins. Nope. I say you can find a task for me to do until my shift at 1 starts, or I can sit here, but I'm staying clocked in. You were the one that said I have to be here at 8:30 no matter what. I'm just following your instructions. I had to deep clean the entire school until my shift actually started, but it was so worth it because I still got paid for the whole day and my boss had to admit to me she was full of it. Watching her try to backtrack was the funniest thing that's ever happened to me. So I think the boss should have admitted fault and rescheduled her the next week, but obviously they stood tall. In your opinion, what do you think the boss should have properly have done here, and do you think OP was in their rights? Would you have done the same thing? Let me know what you think in the comments below. You want candy stocked? Okay then. A few years ago, I was working at a fabric store. One of my favorite places to be, but there was one manager that I didn't get on with. Not sure why, but this manager had some sort of problem with me. Since day one, the main boss would put me somewhere in the store and this other one would come in, counter the big boss's orders, and then spend the rest of the shift coming up to me and telling me to stock the candy every 5 minutes. And I do mean every 5 minutes. Ordinarily, this takes about 3 minutes and it's just basic busy work to do between customers. Not this time. So it's the day of darkness in the retail world, more commonly known as Black Friday. Not only are we slammed, but we also have to upsell this new promotional item. We were literally getting marks against us if we didn't sell a certain number that day. The lines were long and it was just one customer after another with no lull in between. By the end of the sales time, every shelf was empty. Now, I am by no means perfect, but I try to make sure I do all of what my job entails. Part of the cashier's job was keeping the front shelf stocked, and everything for that was behind the counter. There was nothing in the mythical back room. And even if there was, the Xmas stuff had started coming in, and for some reason this manager thought the best way to store it would be to put it in the direct middle of the hallway that was the back room, and effectively block all of the regular merchandise. There was about 2 feet of aisle to walk down one side of the room, but that's it. Not relevant, but annoying. So the other cashier and I had cleaned up everything, restocked the shelves, and there was nothing left up front but one box of Necco wafers and seasonal soaps. The candy was decimated, but there was nothing to put there. So we both chalked it up to a job well done, but we weren't allowed to leave the register that day. It had slowed down considerably and we both had about 2 hours of shift left. So we were just talking, attending to the few customers that still trickled through and generally attempting to wind down from the insanity. So of course, this manager comes through and tells me specifically to stock candy. I try to explain that there isn't any backstock and she waves me off and repeats to stock candy. I spend a few minutes double checking that there isn't more stock, but nope, it hasn't magically reproduced behind the counter. Okay, guess it's stocked. Apparently not, as the manager comes back a few minutes later and tells me to stock it again. My coworker tries to explain and gets cut off with a, "Temp, you need to stock it. I want those shelves full, don't stop until they are." Okay, sure, full shelves. Now this has been months of her generally trying to get me to do most of the work in the store. This manager was having me do a lot of her own work. Double if she found out I was having a health issue and I was tired of it. My doctor was already telling me I had to leave for my own health, so I wasn't feeling generous. Told my coworker what I was going to do and she backed me up. I stocked those shelves. These tiny little candy shelves were stocked full of anything I could find behind the counter. Those Necco wafers, soaps, various items from the promo shelves. I even fit a couple of steam irons on the top ones. Apologized to customers for the wait because I couldn't stop until those shelves were full. The manager came up, red in the face and ready to start yelling, but I was saved by the fact that there were customers there at the time. I checked my watch, grinned, waved, and my coworker and I walked to the back and clocked out. I never went back. Shopped there a few times since and that manager is gone. What a terrible person. Bottom line, it's no surprise to me that the manager is gone because they were incredibly incompetent and caused a lot of harassment. Manager wants to handle everything themselves. Some background info. I work for a large company in a factory setting. I essentially have 3 managers. My boss is the manager for product quality. The 2 above her run the whole factory split between them. Me is me, boss is my boss, manager is the only factory manager we have for now. This all starts about 2 weeks ago. We lost one of our managers because he got promoted. So now we only have manager to do the work of 2 people. The initial days were good. She was still learning from the supervisors below her on how to run the new half of the building. She had never dealt with anything when her partner was here. She liked to have a firm grasp of the processes and find ways to drive more productivity for less labor. Not in the bad way usually. Cue the issue. She spent 2 days, half-hour work week, learning before she decided that she knew it all and could run everything from wherever she was in the building. This turned into blaming me and my team for the shortcomings of her associates. Just because the quality team has final say on a lot of things does not make us more powerful than her. She has the ability to ignore us and make her own calls. This ability is one she started to overuse and I nearly couldn't take it anymore. After 3 verbal conflicts between manager blaming me for things that I have zero control over, she goes to boss to have me reprimanded. Whatever rant or deflation of stress and anger manager gave to boss made no sense to her, so she came to get my side and put together a full picture. After reading my 2 weeks of notes about the manager disregarding the information I was trying to give her and talking down to me like I was a child, I'm 2 feet taller than her. I explained that it is not my place to contradict her, but it is my job to dive into problems and find solutions to give to the manager. My boss agrees that I have been doing everything 100% correctly after examining both testimonies and all the open communications in our factory communication boards. After my boss tells manager that I'm genuinely trying to aid her judgment and find ways to solve her problems, she takes a deeper dive in the hating me department. Right after the talk from my boss, the manager calls me out over the factory radio 3 times within an hour about communication, everything I do to her 100% of the time. Cue malicious compliance. In the last 6 hours of my 12-hour shift, I begin adding all information regarding my work and my employees' work to our group chat so everyone can have 100% visibility on what I'm doing and how she responds. Every 5 to 10 minutes for 3 hours I did this. Post in the group chat, verbally call out over the radio with the same information, ask if she wanted me to do anything else. After the 3-hour mark, she called me on the radio and said, "That's enough," and freed me from the act of telling her everything I was doing. Manager has not spoken to me since. About to go in for day 2. Wish me luck. The only thing I can touch on here is thankfully the boss has a brain and can see the situation here and help them out. Sure, I will take a few minutes to clean it. I had asked my manager via note, I work overnight and don't see her often, to please ask my coworkers to be decent people and stop making a mess of my organized and clean work area. Since I am the full-time person for this station, it would save time if people would just clean up after themselves. I have to note this freed up time is used to essentially put away product for her. Any trucks not put in the storeroom or cooler make more product people on day shift didn't get to, and cleaning and organizing. Didn't refer to the stations as mine, just used their company given name. Didn't blame a specific coworker at all. The part-time employee who covers my days off is a notorious pig. Won't clean up after himself. Uses all supplies and never refills a thing. He was so lazy about his job duties and getting things done, management took him off night shift. He, for some reason, is one of the few people my manager is fond of. Her response to my note was pretty much this: "No, get over it. Since you are the full-time employee for this job, take a few minutes and clean it yourself. Mr. Mac Shifty Pants doesn't go near that station or use the supplies there. He goes to the storeroom and pulls what he needs as he needs it." So I am fuming because now I am doing her trucks, the chef's job, my job, bringing supplies from the back of the store to our department, putting said supplies away, and cleaning and organizing, and she can't do her job and manage people? She can't get grown-up people to tidy up after themselves? Mr. Max Shifty Pants is wasting time going back and forth while she watches. I will take a few minutes and clean up the station. So I empty the entire station of the supplies I use and put them in the storage room. Clean the station. I will go get what I need as I need it from now on, like the oof who covers my days off. Small and petty? Yes, but I don't give a freak. Do unto others, right? Good for OP, but I hope in the future the manager doesn't screw them over just because they like Mr. Max Shifty Pants, saying that they're messing up the stocking supplies or whatever because Mr. Max Shifty Pants can't get anything. Driving up my hours. So for some context, I work at a facility for adults with developmental disabilities. Some of these are day services, some are group homes. My facility is one of some 20 or so, which is around 50 miles away from any of the others. This becomes very important later. So due to the pandemic, all of the company's day services were told that they would be closed until further notice, and that initially we could choose to work at one of the group homes in our area instead. This didn't apply to me or my facility as we had no local group home. When questioned about this, my boss, who is amazing, said that we should be able to use our sick leave to cover our hours, which would have been great, but then her boss's boss found out and began laying out new rules company-wide. The most important of which was no employees were allowed to take vacation or sick leave to make up for their lost hours. Anyone wanting to maintain their minimum hours to comply with full-time worker status must work shifts at one of the group homes. The company, though, would pay for all travel time and allow us to use company vehicles. And this is where the malicious compliance comes in. Remember when I said the nearest group homes were around 50 miles from my facility? I went through and found the shortest shifts available at different facilities for the entire month of April and began taking 2 to 3 shifts per day, allowing plenty of drive time between each one. My boss, who had to submit these shift requests, instantly saw my intentions, but sent them through and got them approved. Did I mention she is awesome? I later went and added up the hours and the drive time. For the month of April, I will be working some 155 hours, of which 65 is nothing but driving from facility to facility, which is 65 hours of time to enjoy some good audiobooks and music. OP's following the age-old adage, work smart, not hard. Probably my favorite story of the day, hearing how much payback they're going to get in the end. But a good question for you is, which of these stories that I read today are your favorite? Let me know in the comments below. But that's all the time we have for today, so thank you so much for watching the Storytime channel. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing, and don't forget to let me know which of these stories was your favorite of today. Thank you all again for watching and listening to the Storytime channel.